it was a wonderful conference that we went to, and the ambassador from Taiwan was there, and he spoke. He was the keynote speaker, and this is what he said, and I thought this was very interesting, that they live under a constant threat in Taiwan of China taking over and coming in and swooping up. But he said the first thing they would need to do would be to debilitate the United States of America, to stop us from protecting our interests in Taiwan. And I thought that was very interesting. And that's why I believe when you see Pete Hegseth and you hear Kash Patel talking about land near military bases.
Senator Hodges, I just want to make the point also that you were willing to compromise in the committee to a degree on the distance, and yet still it was ultimately the bill was defeated. This is one of those bills, Senator Hodges, that is so hugely important, and one that should be absolutely non-controversial if Louisiana citizens do a survey and say, do you believe that military intelligence should be able to assess threats, potential threats to our security from property owned by our foreign enemies within 50 miles of a military base or a critical infrastructure facility, and if necessary, expropriate that property to protect our security? How many Louisiana citizens do you think would answer no? I think it's probably 0 out of 10.
Exactly.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
My name is Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my fearless and ferocious co-host, Chris Alexander. And today we will be having an after-action report with Senator Valerie Hodges. She represents Louisiana's 13th district in the Denham area, and she stood strong on some tough issues this past session, and we will see if we can get her to spill the tea on what all went down at the legislature this session. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Galatians chapter 5, verses 4 through 6. And it says, if you want to be made holy by fulfilling the obligations of the law, you have to cut off more than your flesh. You have to cut yourselves off from the anointed one and have fallen away from the revelation of grace. But the Holy Spirit convinces us that we have received by faith the glorious righteousness of the anointed one. When you're placed into the anointed one and joined to him, circumcision and religious obligations can benefit you nothing. All that matters now is living in the faith that is activated and brought to perfection by love. And this scripture, I should have teed it up a little bit better, but Paul was addressing a controversy at the time where the Gentile converts to Christianity were being made to follow the Jewish rules related to circumcision. And the Apostle Paul was explaining that there was no religious obligations that needed to be followed in order for these new believers to be in right standing with God. Our only obligation in connection with our faith in Jesus is love. Remember when Jesus talked about the first and the greatest commandment, he instructed us, it was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then he said the second commandment is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. He went on to say that all of the law and the prophets were summed up in those two commandments. So let's take off any religious obligations we're carrying today. And let's shift our focus onto our true obligation as people who bear the name of Jesus, and that's love. Love God and love people. Heidi Baker, who's a great missionary in Mozambique, if you're not familiar with her, says it this way. Love looks like something. Her point is that love is not just a feeling, but it's got action associated with it. So let's be people whose love is action.
Yeah. You know, Danielle, as you were reciting the scripture of Galatians, I don't know why it popped into my head that, the legislature can be a very difficult place to follow that high command of Jesus, to love others, and, our guest today, Senator Valerie Hodges, manages to do that. She seems to have found the balance between standing firm and sternly for principles that really matter, and also doing it in a way that reflects the love of Christ. And there are not a whole lot of people who are able to do that, but
It's true.
absolutely, Senator Hodges does it routinely. And what a pleasure, Senator Hodges, to have you here with us today. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Danielle, both of you for having me on. I appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words and the Bible verse. And that's the thing. When your worldview is based on biblical principles, you have to stay focused on, keep your eyes on Jesus and not on the circumstances around you. And I know who called me to do this and why he called me to do it. So it makes it easy as long as I stay in that place of focusing on God. And this really, the battle is his, but we are in a battle for our state and for our nation. And that's what we're fighting for. And I appreciate you guys and what you're doing and your presence at the Capitol, what you do up there, and the influence that you have. And I appreciate your job that you're doing as well. So we're battling together.
We are battling together, and it's always a pleasure to stand with you. By the way, just parenthetically, Senator Hodges, our scorecards have now come out, and you're at the top of the list among state senators on our scorecard. Evaluated,
Well, thank you.
we evaluated based on hugely important bills, select number of bills, and while the wool seems to have been pulled over the eyes of a number of your colleagues, the wool was never pulled over your eyes. And you always seemed to see through, even when you were voting alone on some things. And we'll get to that. But I want to start here with SB 226, because this has been a subject of a lot of attention on the part of our listeners, LCAG members. SB 226, which, among other things, your bill would have authorized the military to assess and, if necessary, expropriate immovable property in Louisiana if it was owned by a sworn foreign enemy of the United States, if that property posed a threat to our critical infrastructure, if located within 50 miles of a military base or critical infrastructure facility. It seemed to us, and I'm sure to most conservatives, that that was an absolute no-brainer. That is something that simply needs to be done, particularly in light of what's going on in the country and the threats we face. Why was that provision in that bill, in your view, torpedoed in a Republican-dominated Senate Judiciary Committee?
Well, it's a good question, Chris, and I really don't know the answer. I think it's probably a little more complicated than just at face value, because it had two things in there, dealt with two things concerning foreign adversaries. One was the voting aspect, the voting machines. So it had that in there, that you couldn't buy any components or voting equipment that was manufactured by one of our foreign adversaries. And there's a list by the State Department. I know most of your listeners probably know that. And so there was that component of the bill. And we had people come in and testify from Washington, D.C., who actually worked very closely with Congressman Mike Johnson, and Cleta Mitchell came in and testified on my bill on that aspect. But then the other aspect of the same bill is both dealing with foreign adversaries, was that you can't buy, about the military land that you spoke about. I just thought, like you said, it's a no-brainer. The president issued a proclamation, an executive order, saying that no voting machines can have any components dealing with, especially the Chinese Communist Party. And the Secretary of State was opposed to that. And she told me that she was going to work with me on some amendments, but somehow the amendments didn't get adopted. And so then when we went to talk about the part about the military, so I knew, so they amended that out in committee. And so then what was left was the military part. And I was shocked at the amount of pushback there was on that. And some of the lobbyists came to the table and said, well, this would pretty much cover the whole state if 50-mile radius, because we have military bases all over Louisiana.
What's wrong with that?
But yeah, so it got out of committee, and I just
Well, no, but Senator Hodges, it did not get out of committee with the two most important provisions of the bill. Both of those provisions were gutted, and
the military part was still in there until it got to the floor, and then they killed it. They left the military part in there about the military bases and the land owned by the CCP. So when I went to do it on the Senate floor, they let it out of committee with that in there after they gutted the voting.
You're saying that the expropriation part, the part authorizing the military to expropriate immovable property, made it out of committee? My understanding was that it did not. Well, Then I
They
stand
gave you at
corrected.
least a hard time. They at least gave you a very hard
A very,
time.
very hard time. And I was actually surprised that the vote came down by one vote, it got out. But that was the debate on the floor that we had, was like, why are you bringing this bill? Because the military, we're giving them authority they don't have now. Well, and basically, I thought it was very interesting that it was mostly Republicans who were coming down questioning me about why we needed this bill.
Including the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Greg Miller.
It was really threw me for a loop, because I was surprised about that, because we are in I guess you could say, a Cold War, a silent war with the Chinese Communist Party. They are undermining at every aspect. So, and I said, basically, this bill would allow, we're not telling the military they have to expropriate. We're saying if they need to, which would, worst case scenario would be if we're at war, they could go in and immediately expropriate that land. And you know what's interesting? Well, so let me not get ahead of myself. So there was so many people coming down questioning the issue that what we were, it was unexpected by my fellow Republicans, honestly. And so I'm going to try to be real careful what I say. I decided to return the bill to the calendar and to get more information to the members. And in agreement for that, the bill didn't pass. Basically, I just returned it to the calendar because I knew I didn't have the votes for it. But we started a task force to study this issue. And we're standing up that task force right now. And what we'll do, because it's mind-boggling to me. You guys remember 2 years ago when we had hundreds of Chinese,
Yeah.
I don't know what you call them, but they're representing the Chinese Communist Party coming to the Capitol. So whenever I agreed to return it to the calendar, we started a task force, and we'll stand that up. It'll have every agency that's involved in this, that we can look at this issue. Did you guys see, and I hope your listeners saw this, because Pete Hegseth just said, what was shocking to me, they were saying, why are you bringing this bill? Why do we need this bill? And Iran, I mean, did you guys see this? Israel, right before they retaliated against Iran, they had drones in close proximity to their military bases, and in a warehouse that they had assembled the drones, and that's how they debilitated their airstrike, really, in Iran. Ukraine did the same thing to Russia, real close to military bases, and using drones. It would have stopped that. It would have allowed the military to at least investigate, to say who owns this land. We know there are places in Louisiana that is owned by the Chinese Communist Party. Who knows if that's not what they're doing? I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but we don't know what they're doing.
One thing we do know, Senator Hodges, is that our foreign enemy countries, China foremost among them, have as their chief purpose to dismantle our infrastructure. That is absolutely beyond dispute at this point. They want to take us out in any way that they can. And I want to make it clear to our listeners here that in a Republican-dominated Senate, a provision that would simply authorize the military to assess the threat of foreign enemy-owned property within 50 miles of a critical infrastructure facility, assess that threat, and determine whether or not it poses a threat to our security, and if so, to reclaim and expropriate that property. That bill, that provision of your bill, was killed in a Republican-dominated Senate. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that, because to me, it is beyond reprehensible that would occur. And the excuses that they came up with, as Danielle and I discussed pre-show, were entirely pretextual. I don't know what the real motives behind it are, but there is nothing that is of more fundamental importance than protecting our infrastructure from those foreign threats. Particularly, it's like I said, it's not unknown what their intentions are. That's what makes it all the more stunning to me.
Chris, I also want to add to that real quick that what they cannot get away from is the fact that this legislature also just passed a campaign finance reform bill that allows foreigners, including foreign adversaries, to donate to their campaign funds. And it allows them to do that from outside of the U.S. and I believe outside of the state. I can't remember the exact parameters. So it's going to be of vital importance for us to pay very close attention to where money comes from that goes into these election coffers, because what happened to your bill, Senator Hodges, is in no way unconnected to the fact that people want to receive money from foreigners.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And did you see the clip of the FBI director, Kash Patel, saying, he said two things: this is insanity and it is lunacy, that we are allowing the Chinese Communist Party to own land by military bases. He said that, like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, or it could have been when we were in session. I'm not sure, but I thought, don't any of these people watch the news and see what's going on and see what our national intelligence is saying, the FBI, the director of national security, saying these same things? And so this was not some idea made up by Valerie. So that's why we're going to have the task force, because we want to look at this. We've got Secret Service that's going to be on the task force, and we can look at this. And I believe it can. We just have to bring light, raise the awareness of it. I don't think people believe this is really happening. It's hard to comprehend, and people think, well, the national government's going to take care of it, and hopefully they are. But we have a state's obligation, and that was one thing I thought it was interesting. After my bill had failed, I heard Kash Patel say, this is a states' rights issue. States need to be doing something about this, and that's why I brought the bill, because it is a state's right. We've got Fort Polk and Barksdale and other military bases here. And it's curious to me that they are buying land around these places. So anyway, I don't know if you guys want to play that clip.
Yeah, let me play the clip. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
See real quick. See if I can get it. Can y'all see it?
I can't see it.
You can't see it?
No.
All right. I'm kind of a novice. All right. Here we go.
Hear it?
Yeah, I'm not hearing it. Danielle, you can hear it?
You can't hear it?
No.
I'm sorry. You can hear it, Senator?
I cannot.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I can hear it. I don't know why it's not coming through. Okay. Well, why don't I just plan to I'll link to it in the show notes.
And I want to mention this also.
And I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, and if whether you're able to get it up or not, but I wanted, Senator Hodges, it's one thing for the average citizen perhaps not to be fully aware of the threat, but it's quite another thing for our elected officials who are charged with protecting us to act like they're not aware of the threat. And I think that it is just stunning that anybody in the state Senate would not understand the threat that our foreign adversaries pose, specifically China, which just leads me almost to the inescapable conclusion that there have to be other reasons why. It can't be because they do not understand or see the threats we face as you do.
Well, there are lobbyists who are lobbying for those interests in Louisiana, and I know who they are. So there's that, but I don't think that my fellow senators, let me just put it that way, would actually, if they understand the threat, that would outweigh, that a lobbyist could outweigh what's really going on here. And I'm hoping that next year we can bring this bill. I was just at a conference. It was last week or 2 weeks ago with a group called State Armor, and Michael Lucci is the head of that. And it was a wonderful conference that we went to, and the ambassador from Taiwan was there, and he spoke. He was the keynote speaker, and this is what he said, and I thought this was very interesting, that they live under a constant threat in Taiwan of China taking over and coming in and swooping up. But he said the first thing they would need to do would be to debilitate the United States of America, to stop us from protecting our interests in Taiwan. And I thought that was very interesting. And that's why I believe when you see Pete Hegseth and you hear Kash Patel talking about land near military bases, we saw it happen recently. I mean, this was like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. When Ukraine had the land near military bases in Russia, and it had a warehouse with drones, same thing. So, if you had drones coming from 50 miles away, you have time to see them and intercept them. But if it's within a half a mile or 2 miles or 20 miles, the military doesn't have a lot of time to act. So that's a whole nother issue.
And I
But
want to, Senator Hodges, I just want to make the point also that you were willing to compromise in the committee to a degree on the distance,
I
if I
was.
remember correctly. You were willing to compromise 25, 20 miles, whatever it is. You were not intractable in your position at all. And yet still it was, ultimately it was, the bill was defeated. This is one of those bills, Senator Hodges, that is so hugely important and one that should be absolutely non-controversial. If you were to ask 9 out of 10 Louisiana citizens or 10 out of 10 Louisiana citizens, do a survey and say, do you believe that military intelligence should be able to assess threats, potential threats to our security from property owned by our foreign enemies within 50 miles of a military base or a critical infrastructure facility, and if necessary, expropriate that property to protect our security? How many Louisiana citizens do you think would answer no? I think it's probably
No.
0 out of 10 on that
Exactly.
issue.
And that's what you're talking about, military bases. If you look at the comments on the like Kash Patel's feed on X, if people say, why do they own land anywhere in
Thank
America,
you.
much less around military bases? And so it is absolutely a no-brainer. We're going to do the task force. I've got people that I met in DC that want to come and testify. They have things because, the espionage and the threat that is a real threat. This is not something that, just hyperbole. This is a real thing that's going on. So I'm excited about having the task force. I'm disappointed that my bill didn't get out, but sometimes, that's the way things go. The first year you don't get it. And hopefully next year when people have a better understanding, we'll try to get some people. But, one of the questions that I got was, well, did Barksdale reach out to you and ask you to do this bill? Did anybody from Fort Polk come and testify? Well, they can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not their job, and they're not allowed to either. And so we just, as citizens and as leaders, we are the ones that have to inform ourselves and do this. So I'm excited about that. I can't do anything about what happened, but I am excited that we're going to get this task force stood up, and then we'll keep you guys in the loop, and hopefully y'all can attend the meetings.
One more point on this, and then I want to, and Danielle's probably going to ask you about it, but I have to ask you this. So basically, the state Senate in Louisiana is relying on getting information from the federal government, which you said essentially the military can't necessarily provide to them, instead of researching it and understanding based on their own information what kind of threats we're facing. And they're basically using the fact that the military or Barksdale didn't reach directly out to you as an excuse to kill the legislation.
That was, I guess you could, that's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
I don't really know. It was shocking because I just didn't think that we would have any pushback on it.
You don't even have to be informed. Excuse me. You don't. If you just look at this bill on its face and you say, well, let's say there is no threat. What harm is the bill doing? The bill does no harm.
Yeah, well, I think there is the aspect, and this is one of the things, Michael Lucci is the CEO for State Armor, and that's a great organization, has a ton of information, and they're going to be a great resource for us and for the other legislators in the state to understand the threat that's going on. Because of the investment that China makes in our state and in other states, because of that investment, some people are willing to look the other way and say, well, maybe this could be a threat, but, we have, hundreds of millions of dollars, and maybe that's not really that bad. And I'm just not assuming that.
This is absolutely fundamental. You talked, and by the way, while you're doing the study during the off season here, we're going to be making sure that our listeners and Louisiana voters understand specifically who facilitated the demise of this very important legislation. They're going to absolutely know who they are. So, but I want to switch gears for just a second here.
Hold on, Chris. Hold on.
Go ahead, Danielle. Sorry.
Do you have any sense yet for who's going to be on the task force? Because we know there's some really great members of the Senate, but I'd like some of the less informed, stickier, less useful members of the Senate to join and have to listen to this.
Well, I'm highly considering asking the president of the Senate to appoint Senator Bass, because he does represent military bases, and then probably Senator Klein-Peter. I probably need to call them as soon as I get through this podcast because I haven't talked to them about it yet. But I think Senator Klein, former military, he's the head of the Homeland Security Committee. I think he would be great, close proximity to here. So, and hopefully they'll accept that appointment.
And one more question, and it's for both of you because you're in a better position to know than me, but I believe there was a bill this session that would have required anyone lobbying on behalf of a foreign government to register in the state of Louisiana. Of course, that's already the case at the federal level, but I think it is an important step to make sure that the state is alerted to their status.
Absolutely.
Did that bill pass this session?
I think it did. Tori, do you know?
I think so.
I'm almost positive that it did
Okay.
pass. It's super, super important bill to record. That way we can identify where the money's coming from and that, the saying, follow the money. And then I think that's a super important bill.
And I would love it if at every committee where these lobbyists come to testify who are on that list, that it gets flagged that they are on that list and they're representing a foreign government.
Yeah, that's a good job for you guys. Look, because we depend so much on your expertise and getting that information out. Because as you know, when we're in session, we are juggling 100 things every day, different bills and the bills that we're doing, and then people and phone calls and all that kind of stuff. Plus our family life. We come home at night, so we really depend on you guys to help inform the members of these kinds of things. And I think that's a real good idea, Danielle, to let people know on the committee who is actually representing those interests.
Yeah, definitely. We lost Chris. I'm sure he's trying to get back in. He must have had a blip with his.
Saw that.
But I know he wanted to get into a little bit about the elections aspect of your bill as well. We saw that DNI Gabbard is investigating the computerized voting systems as directed by President Trump through his executive orders. Secretary Landry, was she always opposed to this piece of legislation? Because I was kind of under the impression that she was a little supportive of it and then maybe changed her tune when she went in to testify.
I didn't hear from her until the day of, and she told me that she did not support that because they're fixing to put out a request for proposal, and she didn't want to box herself in with limitations. And I guess I don't know where she was. She didn't contact me until the day of. In fact, I think I reached out to her because one of the members told me that she was against my bill, and I was very, very disappointed that she had not contacted me before that.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting that she would not mind being boxed in by purchasing a tremendous, something that would cost and impact the state a great deal, both financially and our voice, the hampering aspect being that there's a nexus to our foreign adversaries. That's a little shocking.
Right.
And I guess on that note, you were the lone person in the entire legislature who stood up against House Bill 577, and Chris can do a better job of explaining that than me. But in my view, it was a golden ticket for her to do, the Secretary of State, that is, to do a run around the typical procurement process and blaze ahead purchasing a computerized voting system to the tune of $150+ million for the state, with the backdrop of what I just said. DNI Gabbard has a task force looking at this issue, and they already have conveyed that there are big problems with these machines. What was it about? Well, one, thank you for standing for that bill, against that bill. And what was it in the bill that kind of had you stand up and say, not so fast?
Honestly, Danielle, I don't remember.
I was going to say there were a lot of bills.
I'd have to go back and read the bill. There's so many different bills. Tell me what it did again.
This was the bill that said that she could do a direct bid instead of a competitive procurement for the voting systems.
Well, I think because it didn't give the public input, and it I'm saying slow the process down, not speed it up.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be there's, from what I understand, from what they've told me at the federal level, there's going to be 3 new companies who are developing software and hardware for voting equipment. And they're saying within the next 14 to 18 months, they're going to have it. that would comply with President Trump's executive order. And we just need to slow the process down. But basically, she doesn't want to wait.
Yeah.
And that's why I voted no, because I think we need to slow it down as much as we can until, I mean, I know our voting machines are old and antiquated. And she said, well, 2 more machines broke. Well, 2 more machines broke across the state, 2 out of, I don't know how many we have, but
Yeah.
I think we could probably piece together 2 more machines until next year. And that's when they expect to have the new equipment. I hate to see the state spend, it was years ago, 4 years ago, it was going to be $100 million. I don't know what it's going to be now.
Yeah.
We don't know what the cost is. And just to change the procurement process to do that, I'm in disagreement with that.
Yeah. Well, I've had a big problem with the Secretary of State's apparent lack of interest in cleaning up the voter rolls. You know, last legislative session, Senator Facey authored a bill that would require proof of citizenship to vote. Secretary of State Landry pushed and made it so that that wasn't even going to be effective before the 2024 election for president, the most important election of our lifetime, which thankfully we still were able to have a positive outcome, the right outcome in that election, thankfully. But she conveyed this session in committee, and I'm not sure if it was, I don't believe it was for one of your bills that she testified that she actually has not made any moves to codify that, to enforce it, and that people are operating on the honor system right now to register to vote in the state of Louisiana, which is pretty shocking. So anyway, I've just had some serious issues with the way that this is all being approached. But I hope that the people are loud enough and that the legislature stands firm enough to slow her down.
Well, that's my hope too. I mean, and to her credit, I think Nancy has done a good job. And before that, I mean, this is issues that we've been working on for years. We're talking 6 years that we've been working. And now that Louisiana is, according to the Secretary of State, second in the nation for voting integrity. And so we've moved from however far down we were to being second in the nation. I want to be first in the nation. And I think that if we buy machines that are manufactured by China, that's certainly not going to happen. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I would say that that's a flawed ranking, and we're way further down the list than second. But we may be second, but the bar is so low, Senator Hodges, in terms of ranking our election systems. I think they pretty much are all pretty close to trash and very vulnerable across the country. Chris, welcome back. We're sorry you got bumped out. You are on mute.
Sorry about that. I don't know exactly what happened, but we're back here. And I wanted to, you may have already discussed this, but I wanted to ask you specifically, Senator Hodges, about 577. And was it your understanding before regarding the election provisions that would have codified President Trump's EOs on election security that Secretary of State Landry supported the legislation or not?
We did cover it. She was talking.
We
did cover that. Yep. Sorry, Chris.
All right. No problem at all. But I do believe that moving toward a computer-based voting system is not the right way to go. I think it contradicts what President Trump has said, what Elon Musk has said, what Tucker Carlson has said. And I think anytime you're using computers to vote, even if there is this, quote, paper component that the Secretary of State talks about, I think it's extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so that's what, we talked a little bit about that, trying to get Secretary Landry to slow the process down. The experts, Cleta Mitchell and others, are saying, just not to be redundant, but to just let you know what I said, that within the next 14 months, there should be 3 new systems that are developed that would be safe and secure. So I don't know, we see this across the board in technology. Everything is manufactured overseas. And so I see the dilemma that's there. There's nothing here that's manufactured here or Canada or, one of in Italy, that we trust. It's our foreign adversaries. And I don't want to be buying voting equipment from foreign adversaries. So
she's committed to it and does, the Secretary of State, Senator Hodges, committed on the record in front of the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee that there would not be any purchase of foreign parts or foreign manufactured voting equipment. And she's on the record stating that in response to Senator Maguez.
So we'll see how she threads that needle.
Yeah,
We'll see.
for sure.
Senator Hodges, Chris alluded to the scorecard, LCAG scorecard already, and we just this session felt a lot different for us than last session. If you were just to close your eyes and listen to the debate and see the final votes, you would think that this was a completely different group of people than were excited and moving in conservative direction and punching above their weight last session. I know you're a person of faith and discernment. What was your sense of what was different this session?
I don't know. I haven't figured that out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I saw that. I felt that. A lot more opposition, unexpected opposition. I think people were tired. That's the sense I got, that people were just tired of, I mean, we were in session for what, 7 months last year?
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be a part-time job. And people are trying to do their jobs that they earn money, because we certainly don't make money at this job. So I think people have their businesses they want to get back to. They want to get back to their families. And when you're in session constantly, like we were last year, and then to come back to have a physical session, and then the insurance issue was the most important thing, that is a fiscal session, but our constituents are demanding reform in the insurance industry. And yet, and we got some, but I don't think we're going to see reductions. In fact, insurance company, I believe, just pulled out of the state this week. And you're looking at these catastrophic floods across the nation. And so people are saying, what's going to happen if we have more insurance companies leave Louisiana? That is a huge problem. But we know the lobbyists who push back against these things, who don't want to do total insurance reform. We did do some insurance reform, and I hope that equates to lower premiums and bringing other industries, other insurance companies to Louisiana. That's what we have to do. So I think it's just weariness. That's what I sensed, was just weariness.
What does it indicate, Senator Hodges? Is that I wasn't aware of what you just said about an insurance company pulling out, weeks after a session that was designed to reform insurance in Louisiana. You have a company pulling out. I don't want to draw too much into that, but what does that indicate?
I think it indicates where we live. A lot of it is the weather, and we're right on the coast. And that's a big part of it. It's not just the fact that we have such a higher rate, a litigious climate, people wanting to sue over automobile accidents and things like that, or in falls or whatever. We do have a litigious atmosphere. Some of it is, I think, insurance companies you look at what's happening across the nation right now in the weather. I mean, you're talking about billions and billions of dollars that insurance companies are paying. And we are looking at hurricanes. Hopefully, we were spared last year. But anyway, I believe that's got a lot to do with it. Our insurance policies are going up every year, and we want to be going the opposite direction. And the only way that's going to happen is to bring more companies to Louisiana and more competition.
I doubt that, and one of Danielle and I have talked about this at length. It was HB 148 this session by Representative Jeff Wiley. And it was very disappointing, because it looked as though there were a couple of good insurance reform bills that would have perhaps brought the premiums down. And then you see HB 148, which vests complete and total plenary authority in the Commissioner of Insurance to basically do whatever he wants to do, not tied to any actuarial data. He can go back and raise premiums retroactively. He can go back and reduce premiums retroactively. He can order insurance companies to pay money back to policyholders. And he doesn't have any criteria, no actuarial data to which he's tied to. It says he may consider actual. It seems to me that that's a recipe for just a sort of a political fiefdom within the Commissioner of Insurance. And it's hard to imagine that insurance companies or citizens are going to want to come here knowing that they're operating under that sort of arbitrary mantle of power in the Commissioner of Insurance. And I know that Gabe Ferment stood on the House floor and strongly opposed the bill. But I think that is probably the death knell, unfortunately, that bill, of any hope, at least in the short term, to reduce insurance rates in Louisiana. I don't see people coming here.
I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've always done your part in this fight, and obviously you've demonstrated that you're willing to stand alone on principle on things that matter, and that means everything to us.
It does.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. And I don't know if you guys covered, but I've got a list of bills that we did do on insurance reform. And it should equate to lower premiums because it was HB 450, which repeals the Housley presumption. HB 291 extends the prescriptive periods, which that's huge. HB 436 limits lawsuits by illegal immigrants. That's huge. These were passed. HB 431 is the modified comparative fault that I think that's going to stop a lot of frivolous lawsuits. And then HB 434 is the recovery limits for uninsured drivers. And so all of these things put together, one in itself wouldn't make a huge difference, but all of these bills passed and were signed. And this has got to send a message across the nation to other insurance companies to come, because once we do what other states are doing, I mean, we're trying to model after states that have lower insurance premiums. And I just believe that these are going to they will make a difference. We haven't seen it yet. Of course, we just finished session 2 months ago, and these things that take time. And hopefully, I mean, we're not finished yet, but I mean, this is good stuff that we did. The medical transparency bill by Mike Reese, that was huge. And so I know there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, y'all didn't do anything," but we did. All of these things were hard bills, but they passed. The governor signed them, and I believe we're going to see lower insurance rates.
Yeah, hopefully so. Hopefully so, and we certainly pray so.
Yeah, for sure.
And on another and even happier note, you brought a bill this session to reform DOTD contracting. And as someone who has been living in a community with a bridge under construction for 4+ years in the midst of Hurricane Ida, it's completely just hammered our community to not have that bridge operational. I mean, the drive time to go around it adds so much. And it's really hurt the local businesses in the area as well to not have that traffic that they depend on, just drive-by traffic. Thankfully, that bridge finally opened last week. For the listeners, I have not had my banana split yet to celebrate, but I fully intend on having it. Maybe today's the day. Would you tell us a little bit about your DOTD contracting bill? Because I think that had that bill been in place, this company would have never been able to drag its feet for 4 stinking years. And even if they did, I pray that they're never ever allowed to contract in this state again.
Yeah. Which contractor was it? Do you know?
I don't know, but I will find out.
Yeah. Well, we have a similar situation here, and that's what prompted me to do the bill. We've got a shopping center. I'm sure you're familiar with it, Jubin Crossing, Chris. And so that at the end of that is the Jubin widening, and then there's a roundabout. 10+ years they've been working on that, and it is insane. That is the biggest debacle I have ever seen. And so I was like, what can we do? I go to Florida and Texas. We go on vacation, every year to both places, and entire gigantic bridges are built or what roads widened in a year. I'm thinking we've been 10 years and we can't build a roundabout. This is insane. And so it's got something to do, as I just did research, talked to the head of DOTD, which is Joe Donahue, great guy, and said, what can we do? And of course, under Governor Landry, he's doing, change of regime change and getting all new people. And it's not just business as usual. They really want to see it make a difference. And so that's where we came up with the concept. If you do the A+B bidding, which is time plus money, it's not just about who gives you the lowest price. Okay, right. Well, they said we can do this for 10 million, but this is going to drag on for 10 years. And then they're going to keep coming back every year saying we're going to pull off the job if you don't do a BA7 and give us more money. That can't continue to be like that. And so we worked with DOTD and with the Contractors and Builders Association to get the bill to where on certain projects, the A+B bidding, it's the time plus the money. So there was some provisions put in there for smaller companies. And then you've got the DBE contractors that had some concerns about it, but I think we addressed those concerns with the overhaul that has taken place with DOTD. The governor did that, basically. He just said, we've got to completely overhaul DOTD. I was excited about that. There's a lot of hard work that went into this session. That's what, when you asked me what is like a different set of people, we did hard things and not real big, popular things like the social things, like the, what I'm saying? Like last year, we got a lot of social things passed that we had been trying for years to pass. But this year was a session that dealt with things like that, with the overhaul of DOTD. We cannot continue to drag on projects. And so I think with the overhaul, the restructuring of it, that we're going to see, especially with the bill that I did, the A+B bidding, tells them that you have to look at this component of the time as well, because my husband and I do flip houses, and so we're doing one right now. And so I just make sure that I've got somebody over there today, and he said, well, I can do it for this price. I said, but how long will it take and when can you start? So that kind of thing that's why I understand that it doesn't matter. Well, if he can't start, he might be, $2,000 cheaper, but if he can't start for 4 months, that's too late. And I think there just needs to be more honesty and integrity with these contractors, that there's also, we built in incentives that if you finish in time or you finish early, then your incentive is you're going to make more money. So that's those kinds of things is what other states do, and it's just taken the leadership. I appreciated Governor Landry for supporting the bill and signing it into law. We're making changes. These are big issues like the insurance issue and DOTD, but we're talking major restructuring that's taking place. So I'm excited.
And you have, every reason to be optimistic about SB 216, and because it is just unbelievable that citizens would have to wait year after year after year for these projects to be completed. And there is some real teeth in your bill in SB 216. So hopefully that will result in a lot less inconvenience for Louisiana motorists.
There's more work that needs to be done, definitely on quality, I think. And that's the thing, Chris, you can't be an expert on everything, but that's one of the things that I want to start pushing for with DOTD, is that they have actual people going and overseeing these projects from DOTD. Yes. Sometimes they contract it out, like one of the contractors that's doing the Jubin Crossing. DOTD wasn't even really aware of what was not being done out there. And you literally would sit in traffic for 30 minutes to go a half a mile every day to go to work and to come home from work. And so that's just not acceptable. So I believe there's going to be more oversight with DOTD, more involvement, and getting these contracts passed. We can't do anything about what has happened in the past, but going forward, these ideas and these bills that we're putting in place are going to make a difference going forward. And what I want to do is draw more contractors to the state. And that's super important. We don't have enough contractors. And one of the reasons that these bids are awarded is because, well, you only had 3 major contractors that bid on them, and they already have 25 projects. So you just have to do what you have to do. But I've encouraged DOTD to reach out outside of the state to other contractors. We're looking at a flood project that we went over to Texas about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I've encouraged DOTD and ARBC to solicit the contractors in Texas to come bid on these projects here in Louisiana, because they got the job done. You see their work. They did it. And so those are the kind of things that we can expand our base and have more competition, and stop using contractors who don't do their job, who drag it out for 8 years, or a bridge for 4 years. What? I mean, why? That's just, I don't understand that.
And what encourages me about the reforms to DOTD and to the contracting process is that this really seems to be shifting the focus of government back on the essential functions of government. Yes. So I think about that, and I think about, I believe it was Senator Cloud's bill, along with another bill that is highlighting the amount of money that is being appropriated for nonprofits, for non-governmental organizations out of our taxpayer dollars. And those do need to be highlighted, because those are most likely essential functions. And our tax burden in this state is way too high. We need to be able to see clearly, and people need to be able to understand where their money's going, and they need to feel the effects of their money going to the right place. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that some of the actions that were taken this session are moving us in that direction.
I do too, Danielle. That was a great bill that Senator Cloud did, and we need to be looking at every penny like that so that we can put it into roads and bridges and reducing taxes.
Yeah. What are the, Senator Hodges, Danielle has talked about debarment a lot. I think that's one of her favorite words when it comes to contractors who are either incompetent, corrupt, inefficient, and just don't do their job. I think having strong provisions that would permanently prohibit contractors from doing business with the state if they don't do their jobs in an efficient way is also a strong incentive.
It is, and I've actually discussed that putting certain contractors on a list of do not bid. But right now, that would be a discussion for next year, that possibly we could do that. We just need more contractors to come to the state. We don't have a plethora that we really need for what we want to do.
Yeah. Well, Senator Hodges, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. We thank you for always for standing up for us. Before we let you go, I wanted to let our listeners know that on Tuesday, the 15th, coming up at 10 a.m., we will have Commissioner Tim Temple on, and I'm sure that he will have a lot to report on the session, particularly with regard to the insurance issues. So you definitely don't want to miss that. But Senator Hodges, God bless you as always, and congratulations once again on your very high ranking on the LeCag scorecard.
I appreciate you guys being a watchdog and looking out for our constituents in Louisiana. So thank you so much. God bless y'all.
God bless
Thank you.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lecag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.